WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. Catching up with old friends here as the Nolans Saints come to town to take on the Ravens. Two pretty good football teams. We think we're pretty decent. This guy's been down on the Bayou the last couple of years, doing some Saints and doing some Bayou Bengals and all that, and now he has returned here to the home soil of Hagerstown, Maryland. The legendary Fred Hickman joins us here. I grew up watching Fred. You grew up watching Fred. And Fred's still young like all the rest of us. Now that I turned 50 this week, you can find him at F. Hickman News out on Twitter and doing all sorts of things. Fred, always a pleasure to have you on, man. Life takes strange turns here, right? Like, you're much closer to home than you are when I thought I hit you a little while ago. I thought you were still down in Baton Rouge.
Yeah. Well, things change. When I moved from New Orleans to Baton Rouge, and that was about 4 years ago, I decided to do one of those things that was a lifelong dream and move on back over to news. And so I've been anchoring the news ever since. I, moderated debates and all that kind of thing. And the opportunity popped up here, which is great, because we cover like a 4-state area plus the district. So it's Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, and the D.C. area. So it's really, really cool. And so far my wife and I are having a lot of fun. She's been unpacking everything.
Well, it's interesting for me because I'm doing politics around here a little bit, too, because the world just goes that way. I'm going to have Johnny O on the show next week. I'm also going to have Al Redmer on next week, who's a dear friend of mine as well, and they are vying for Baltimore County executive. So, I think in stretching out, and I turned 50 a couple days ago, Fred, full disclosure. I turned 50 on the day the Ravens shut out the Titans in Tennessee with 11 sacks. So at least I get to say that for the rest of my life, my 50th birthday. But, times do change and move on, and I think your story is well told through all of this. I didn't realize you had a background in news before sports. We all know you from television. I was telling my wife, and I was watching you when I was a young guy aspiring to be there, and at some point, a lot of folks from sports, whether it's, Hannah Storm or Keith Olbermann or Robin Roberts, whatever, have Michael Strahan moving into that space off the field as well. But there is a part of this where it's kind of all coming together now in November, isn't it?
No, that's true. And I think that, times are important enough that news requires to have people who can think on their feet. And I think you know this, Nestor, that what we do in sports, we probably have to be right more than anybody else. Why? Because people know more about sports, unfortunately, than they know about things that really affect their everyday life.
You mean I know more about the Denver Broncos defense than I do the Constitution? Really?
Pretty much.
I guarantee you on draft week, more people know more about the guard out of Notre Dame who, might go in the teens or might drop into the second round than they do about anything about the Bill of Rights. Maybe what they saw in Schoolhouse Rock or something. Or remember from Mr. Schlee's 7th grade social studies class, right?
Oh, yeah. I guarantee you when I worked for the Yankees, for the Yes Network, I watched them a few years back. And, I made mistake on a batting average for Lou Gehrig for 1 year. I got like 15 phone calls within 5 minutes. No, that's wrong. People know sports. And so for us to make that transition, I think it's kind of a natural transition to make if you have a passion for it. And I don't think that, there's been any more time, the midterms coming up, 2020 coming up, that it's more critical for people to have actual facts and not fake news, but, actual perspective on what's going on, presenting both sides and, calling balls and strikes right down the middle. And so that's what I'm having fun doing now,
Well, he's in the homeland of Hagerstown at WDVM. You can find him out at F. Hickman News as well on Twitter. Fred Hickman joining us here. I called you to talk Saints, and I know you've been down there watching all of this unfold, and I still sort of marvel. I mean, Aaron Rodgers running around after the game on Monday night. I'm watching that out in Nashville, and obviously Drew Brees coming in this week, what Tom Brady did on Sunday night. And what the Joe Flaccos and the Matt Ryans and the Ben Roethlisbergers and sort of the Andy Daltons that have never climbed the mountain, what it means for all them. But Brees, to have that sort of a familial thing go on, to pass Manning, to have Manning show the Peyton sense of humor, and I think that everyone loves. It's one of the. I think even if you didn't like Peyton Manning, and we didn't like him very much, wearing a Colts jersey around here, but there is something about Drew Brees that I don't know that he is celebrated in the same way in an era of Peyton and Brady and Favre and Rodgers. Not a lot of oxygen in that quarterback room for Drew Brees to some degree.
Well, listen, I'm not the biggest Saints fan in the world, but I have respect for success. And I respect what Drew Brees has been able to do. Think about it. This guy was rejected by the doctors in Miami when Nick Saban was the coach with the Miami Dolphins. My understanding is Saban wanted to sign him. The doctors said no. Ownership said, we're going with the doctors. No, don't do it. Well, that put a chip on Brees' shoulder, no pun intended. And he wound up with Sean Payton. And, pretty much the rest has been history. But think of what would have happened had Miami signed him. Would Nick Saban be at Alabama? Would Alabama be a powerhouse? Would Drew Brees be a first ballot Hall of Famer? A lot of things could happen, but within that one decision in that one day, I would assume the whole course of football changed. And
well, it also ties into Phillip Rivers as well as Eli Manning and the Chargers. I mean, all of that was sort of interconnected at that point, and it really did become a little bit of a Krakatoa as far as, aligning the tectonic plates of how the divisions were going to go, the conferences were going to go. But, boy, there have been some great quarterbacks here, and Brees certainly stands amongst all of them. But, he's never on the cover. It's always Brady or man, and he hasn't had that other guy that he's battled in the way they did either. But, I don't want to play him this week. I know that much, Fred.
No, that's true. And here's the thing. His career has circumvented football. Everybody knows that New Orleans was coming back from Katrina. And the Saints were such a big part of just being a distraction away from all of the destruction and the pain and the heartache. And so Brees is the face of that. I don't think he could have done what he's done anyplace else but New Orleans. And, by the way, he's just a brilliant quarterback. I have to give him credit for that. He really is. He makes all the players around him better. He's one of those guys who shows up, 2 hours before everybody else does, leaves 2 hours after everybody else does. He still does it to this day. He's in phenomenal physical condition. And he's going to be a handful for the Ravens this week, there's no question. But the Ravens are countering with a pretty darn good defense of their own. So I think this is going to be a better game than people expect it might be.
Fred, how many
I like the Ravens to win.
Hey, well, I like the way you're thinking right now, and certainly at home. It's been a month since we've had home cooking 3 games in a row on the road. Fred Hickman joining us here. He's F. Hickman News. He is up in Hagerstown doing it at WDVM. For you to be down, how many years were you down on the Bayou? Because, you spent so many years in Atlanta at CNN.
Yeah, 21 at CNN. 7 years. I was a sports director in New Orleans for 3.5 years, and then I spent 3 years doing my news conversion in Baton Rouge.
Well, you said something, and I think of you as the journalist for the national audience. But yeah, I wasn't a Saints fan or whatever. But being down there and immersed in it from a storyline perspective, because you got there right about the time we came down and won a Super Bowl with Flacco and whatnot. But watching all of that and how much football means down there, and how much LSU and SEC football means, and the cleanup of the storm, and to your point, how the Saints were such a huge part of that, and Benson obviously wanted to move the team at the time, and now he's gone, and it's not his daughter, it's his wife in a different estate. It's been a crazy news cycle, I would think, down there as sports intersects, and the significance of what the Saints mean in a community that can't afford to have a newspaper, right? It's a challenged community down there still after the storm.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and there have been storms since then, too, by the way. Yeah, it's a community that's trying to mesh and come back together again. Remember, the place dispersed after Katrina. There were people going to Houston. There were people going to Baton Rouge. The population there went up, I think it was like 15% overnight for people just trying to get out. When we moved there, it was in 2011. The last FEMA trailer was still there from Katrina. So, I mean, it was just this slow, debilitating, blown out houses, abandoned properties, the whole thing. All of that is still there, and it's still there today. So they're still recovering, which gives me pain, and I digress, for all the folks in Puerto Rico and Texas and now in the panhandle of Florida. It's a long haul. It's a long haul. It's not an easy fix.
Well, and the Saints were one thing that sort of rallied people, and Brees still around as part of that with a team that can win a Super Bowl this year, really.
Well, yeah, and they're good enough to do it. They are good enough to do it. I think, personally, the best team I saw when I was there was the 2011 team. And they had that tooth and toenail game against San Francisco. The 49ers won, went ahead and lost to the Giants, and the Giants went ahead and win the Super Bowl. But I think clearly that the Saints were the better team that year. But Alex Smith and company figured out a way to get it done. But I think this team could have that kind of balance. I'm still a little iffy on the defense. Offense, I think they're fine. But defensively, I don't know if they're going to be able to hang. But now, you look at the NFL, and it seems to me, Nestor, I don't know if you agree with this, but the league is kind of middling all the way through. I don't see that team, that super team that's, we've got to go beat these guys. I don't know, Rams maybe. Kansas City showed me something at New England. They didn't close the deal, but they showed me something. But I don't know if there's that one standout football team there.
Well, the one thing that stood out to me is that Brady and Mahomes the other night, and obviously with Aaron Rodgers, what they represent, and Jared Goff as well as far as young guns, but every team has a capable quarterback right now, right? I mean, even San Francisco, and I know Nathan Peterman may be the exception in throwing the pick the other day, but it doesn't matter whether it's a Baker Mayfield or a Joe Flacco or an Andy Dalton or we're going to see Cam Newton next week. This past week we went and saw Marcus Mariota. We're seeing real quarterbacks here, and at what level they mature probably depends on how many Kamaras they have around them and how many Michael Thomases you can draft and whether you can keep your quarterback upright or not, because the offensive part of this thing and throwing the football, 6 months of the offseason, all we hear is we're committed to the run, we're going to run the ball, we looked at our team, we need to run the ball better, and then when the season starts, nobody runs the ball, literally, right? I mean, it's become so pass-happy that Flacco's flicking the ball around 50 times a week, and I don't know at what point that's going to change or what's going to change it.
Well, I think it's pass-happy because the league has become so protective of the quarterback. You can't breathe hard on a quarterback without, catching a 15-yard flag.
But saying that, it's week 7 and most of them are still standing, which, hey, it's a better game. I watched DeShone Kizer and whatever that kid that played in Green Bay. I don't remember his name, and I got on a plane to go watch him play. But it wasn't NFL football when the backup's that bad, when your season's over with. And we saw a backup quarterback win a Super Bowl last year, which I don't think either of us ever thought we'd see, right? Nick Foles.
Yeah, no, I think that's correct. You look, and their situation where they're kind of a mess down there. The biggest disappointment I've seen so far, and it's not the team's fault per se, but injuries happen. Atlanta has been the most snake-bitten team in the NFL. They have just been decimated by injuries. And for them to even have been in games, to me, has been miraculous. And there are others. I mean, nobody's going to send them flowers or anything like that. That's the game, man. I mean, that's what happens.
Well, that division's also a little screwy, right? My boy Mike Mike Smitty gets fired beginning of the week down in Tampa, and Winston's not progressing. But geez, I mean, Fitzmagic went out and went crazy for a couple of weeks. We got Cam Newton next week. It's your division as much as our division, with Cleveland improved, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati still there. All of these teams do feel capable of maybe winning 10 games, maybe not winning 15, but that's a good league when everybody feels like they can win 10 at this point, right?
No, it makes it interesting. Every week is going to be interesting. I think the season's going to go right down to week 16 for a lot of these divisions and a lot of these clubs. So as a fan, that gets me excited, man. I love that.
Well, you're back in the area now, too, so you got two football teams down, the Redskins and the Ravens, and I know, you love sports and being back involved in all of this. Tell everybody about your new gig and sort of the homecoming part of coming to Hagerstown and working, Fred.
Well, here's the thing. I've never really lived here, but I have a lot of family here. My wife's family's here. She lived here for a long time, but Maryland, Virginia. So it's a homecoming of sorts for me. I'm a huge history buff. And you can't find any more history to find in our area. Not just in D.C. proper, but, which is a stone's throw away from where I live. But, Antietam Battlefield, for example.
Gettysburg, sure.
All these other places that I'm just dying to get out here and enjoy. The weather is fantastic. I cannot tell you how much I hated the Louisiana weather. Sorry, love you, Louisiana, but too hot, too many mosquitoes, too many bugs. I'll come see you sometime.
Hey, Fred, great to visit with you, man. Hope to see you at the ballpark or around. I know you're doing the news thing there, but you'll be meandering into sports. You got the Jones,
yes,
right? It's probably a hell of a lot more fun for you when it's not your job anymore, right? To be out on Twitter worrying about what Drew Brees said this morning, right?
Listen, I know you got to go, but you're absolutely right. It is so much more fun just being a fan again. I haven't done that in 40 years, man. I love it, man.
Well, hey, man, stay in touch. We'll talk some news, politics, life, whatever you got going on. It's always great to have you on. Always enjoyed your work. I have great admiration for your ability to keep in there and keep swinging like all the rest of us, man. Appreciate you, Fred.
All right, man. Thank you, Nestor. Anytime, bud.
Fred Hickman joining us here, the legend of my childhood. You can follow him out on Twitter. He's in the area. He's F. Hickman News out on Twitter. He's also at WDVM up in Hagerstown and doing the news thing and back with some family in this part of the world. But I knew he knew a lot about the Saints because he's been down in New Orleans for the better part of the decade after he left Atlanta, covering all things New Orleans sports. So always good to catch up with Fred Hickman. Catch up with a lot of our New Orleans friends. Wish I could catch up with some char-grilled oysters and a little weekend down at the Acme Oyster House and marching up Poydras to win Lombardi trophies. We've had some fun down there on the Natchez and, man, get some bread pudding and maybe a little a burger at the Portical and maybe a little dance, a little fleur-de-lis, all that good stuff. But the Saints are bringing it here. That means 4 more years before we get to go to New Orleans. But hey, we had a Nashville trip. We're going to Carolina next week. Luke's on the scene out in Owings Mills. You can find me out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Cole Roofing. I'm drinking a little Kona Rofo blend out of my Cole Roofing mug right now. But Billy Cole's sponsoring all of the community and charity work that we're doing here at WNST. We have a series on Thursday mornings where I chat with folks like you. Officer Caprio this week in the soccer event over at Loch Raven. We're trying to promote as many local events as we can. Toss me a note. I'd love to have you on nasty at WNST.net. We'll make some room for you. Also, the BuyAToyota.com audio vault is there 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere that you can reach in the world on your mobile device. It's pretty cool. The morning newspaper also delivers to your email inbox at 7 a.m. No spam, no fuss, no muss. Just comes in with a bunch of headlines and love from our sponsors, all brought to you by Planet Fitness at PlanetFitness.com. It's always $5 down, $10 a month at Planet Fitness. Congrats to the Brick family for pulling off the JW Brick 5K over the weekend. Wim Hof, I saw all the great pictures out there. Big thanks to them. Speaking of my Cole Roofing community platform, there's another story for you. Doing some good work out in the community. Also this week, big week down at Laurel. Maryland Million running down at Laurel this week. The entry's up at WNST.net. See you down at the racetrack on Saturday. I'm going to try to swing by and throw a bet down on the ponies. I'm waiting on the baseball games, figuring out what's going on. But a little baseball, a little horse racing, maybe a beverage or two, maybe a crab cake. That's what I'm doing. Laurel Park this week. Get down there for the Maryland Million. Last but never least is our text service. That is breaking news at your fingertips, injury reports, all the good stuff, and all at Luke's discretion. So you know the integrity is involved because Luke Jones is involved in it, right? Of course. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis Colazzos will be here on Thursday getting you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. Also rebroadcast on Sunday morning, and the game's at 4 o'clock this week, so hopefully it won't be cold. I haven't seen the forecast yet, but we'll figure it out. I've got all sorts of gear. 3 rain games, no problem. I got ponchos. I've got reading glasses now that I'm 50 and old. I got it all together. Nasty at WNST.net finds me anytime, anywhere. I am indeed a very available individual. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Tassin, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.